Hi, today I want to build together with you your first Wized and Webflow web application. And a wonderful quote basically that I heard from Julian from MemberStack was, he said that the moment, and he's not a developer, he made clear to mention that now multiple times, but what he said was the moment he understood how to build a simple to-do list application in Wized, the moment he understood that, that was the moment when he knew how to build everything, every idea that he has in Wized. And he said it took 6 hours for him to build that to-do list. This video here is to help you build that to-do list in less than an hour. So, that you have, you can spend your day on doing something else than building a to-do list. We're going to get this done in 1 hour. And after this 1 hour, you will know all the basics, all the fundamentals, all the principles of Wized, of Webflow, of databases, how to build your own APIs and never have to pay a make.com invoice in your whole entire life ever again, which is a pretty cool thing because you're going to get basically unlimited usage for $99 with Xano, which sometimes is a way better deal, and a database. But we're going to build that together. We're going to use Webflow, Wized, and Xano, and we're going to build a full stack application today using NoCode in Webflow. And we will have 100% design freedom inside of Webflow to do all of those exciting things. So we're going to do front end, consists out of Wized and Webflow. Webflow is the UI part of our front end. Wized is the logic part of our front end. And Xano, that is the back end. That is the database where we store the data and the business logic, the APIs. Now, until now, you didn't have Wized and you didn't have the back end. You only had the logic and Webflow. And in between MemberStack, so the logic and Webflow, meaning the logic would be make or Zapier, right? Doing those things, doing the API calls. But it was only half of the piece of the cake. You were only doing something that was like half okay. But, the other half was missing. That's why, bringing in external data, rendering custom things didn't work. So, we had to hack things around with CSS, including me. I used to do that too. We had CMS items, and then we got, the nice emails from Webflow Enterprise asking us to all of a sudden start paying $60,000 a year. I assume more people than they should know about what I'm talking about. So, we're going to avoid all of that craziness today, all that expenses by using Wized. And we're going to reduce our $60,000 Webflow invoice because we have a fully loaded CMS that is not supposed to be that full because we store every member in it and we store every like in it and all of those crazy stuff. We're going to offload that using Wized and Xano on the back end. And we will not need to pay that $60,000 invoice because of this. And we will not need Make and Zapier to have us charge a few pennies all the time somebody likes a post. We're going to do that basically for free after our maintenance cost is covered, which is pretty cool. So, let's start with this right now. So we need Wized and Xano. Xano will be our backend. This will do, again, the logic, meaning the APIs. So You probably know that as webhooks. We're going to build our webhooks in Xano and our Zaps, but without Zapier. We're going to build that in Xano. It is a professional, scalable, no-code backend. So here, no code, don't get scared. It is a professional, scalable, no-code backend. Major industrial leaders are trusting it, and it is visual, but it uses PHP under the hood, which is a super complex and industry broadly used database. You're going to get a Postgres SQL database with Xano, which is pretty cool. Big enterprises are using it, like even Siemens and all those big companies. And it's fully compliant. You have HIPAA, you have all of those things. GDPR, which is great. So we're going to use this. And we're going to use Wized.com as well, which is your logic, and oh, look at that. This is actually why I do the video, because of exactly this, because I want to help you get started and maybe even get some money in the competition. So cool that I just saw that over there. But, this is Wized. Wized is a JavaScript framework that goes on top of Webflow to help us build this application. Wized is really the glue in between Webflow and your logic on the back end, because until now, when we build something in Webflow, we needed to connect that to Zapier, to Make, to whatever. Now we're going to connect that to Xano. But the way we had to connect that was code, right? We needed to go to the forum and do like post, and then, we had to send it to a webhook, and then we had to add some code to fetch that response, and then we didn't know how to display that, and then we need more code, and, all of a sudden I'm going to see the message, code site limit reached, and then I have to use with embeds and have to hide them, and, they're always missing. I don't know where that embed is, where that code, it's all over the place. So this is the problem that Wized solves. Wized helps you add code without writing code. Of course, you can write code in it, and it's not as good as their advertising promise is, where it says no code. I would say Wized is in between no code and low code. It is a little bit more than no code, which is a long word, so they probably just, stick with no code. But I would say it's a little bit more than no code, but a little bit less than low code. So it's a little bit more than no code and a little bit less than low code. Wized is like just slightly there in the middle, because you have to write some super simple functions. But it is super simple, and you can learn it in 5 minutes. So we're going to use that to bridge in between there. And then, of course, Webflow doesn't need any introduction. That is the best design tool in there. And this is where we're going to start. So in here, we're just going to start a normal design. So I'm just going to add a div block here. And what we're going to build is a to-do list application. And I'm going to give you all the hacky web development tips. We're not going to use checkboxes, but we're going to make divs look like checkboxes and so on. But, let's get right started here. So I'm going to add this div block here. This will be the general to-do list item. So I'm going to give this the class of to-do list. Not to-foo, to-do list. Wonderful. I'm going to give it a width of 25 rem. Oh, that was more than 25 rem. And a height of 25 rem. Beautiful. Let's just give it some color here. Beautiful. Let's add some rounded corners. Beautiful. And now we're going to add a box shadow. You can never have too much shadow. Beautiful. Let's add a 7 in here. Doesn't that look miraculous? Wonderful. Now we're going to give it a slight border. It is perfect. And, while we're already on it, we may need to reduce a little bit of the shadow. Beautiful. Like this will win the Webflow Design Award. Beautiful. So let's add, no, 2 rem is too much. Let's do 1 rem padding on all sides so that we can render the list items in here. If you are concerned about the word rendering and list items, and I didn't mention CMS, it's because we're not going to use CMS. We're going to store this on our own database and save thousands of dollars by doing so. We still don't have to write code, but the design experience in the editor is a little bit different, because if you use Webflow CMS, it renders the items inside the editor. But as you can see right now, in this example, we're only going to add 1 list item, and then we're going to move to the Wized dashboard, and then we will see that those items are being rendered on the site, because, Wized is a separate company than Webflow. It's a separate tool, right? The same way as you cannot, which you can because of their app, but before the member stack app, you couldn't see your member stack members in the Webflow dashboard. Same with Wized. You cannot see what Wized is doing if you're not on the live side or in the Wized dashboard, if that makes sense. But you know, this is no bad at all. So let's call this list item, and we're going to design our list item right in here. Let's make this white. Let's give it some nicely rounded corners. And while I'm looking at that, we may want to make those corners a little bit more rounded so they look even beautiful. Wonderful. Let's add some decent padding. Not a border corner, not padding. Padding needs to happen now. So let's add one rem, one rem, one rem, one rem. Wonderful. And now we're going to add a heading in here, just like that. And make sure to select, H3 looks good. Okay, perfect. Let's change that to, let's do this thing. This is the favorite thing that web developers do. We're going to call this to-do item. We're going to add this crazy, those are, by the way, called curly brace. We're going to add those crazy curly braces in here because this will be dynamic content, like tokenized text, basically. You don't remember those words. You will never use them in your whole entire life. So doesn't matter. So here we go. We have that. And while we're already on it, we are already system UI, but that is a little bit too bold. Let's make this timeless thin to normal. Beautiful. So now here we have that. So I'm not going to add a checkbox here because when you do things dynamically, we need to manage state. So, that sounds maybe more high level than it is, but meaning that we will save those things in our database. If it is true, we need to make sure that the checkbox already, when I open the page, is checked at true, right? So it is possible doing this with HTML, but you will find that working with native HTML components like HTML tables, radio buttons is a pain. And, this video is here so that you won't spend 6 hours building this. So we're going to do what web developers love to do. Let's simplify things by making them not accessible. And, we can make them accessible later on. We can hack our way around that it is easy for us to do and accessible. But for this simple demo, we're going to take convenience over accessibility. I'm sorry. But, I'm going to do, first of all, need to do this inside here as a flex to the side. And I need to do a space between. Beautiful. And now, while we're on it, let's center this. Beautiful. And now, I'm just going to give this a height of 2 rem. Perfect. And a width of 2 rem, so it becomes a box. Now I can design this, and let's just call this a checkbox. Which it is not really a checkbox, but it looks like a checkbox. It's a div. So we're going to give this like a slight background so it looks really good. We're going to make the corners round, give it a very subtle border. And now here comes the magic. Now when we build things now as a web application, we can work with combo classes to add interactivity. So I'm going to go to the checkbox and add the combo class of checked. Look at that. And now I need to, update the style a little bit. Make this maybe a little bit more gray. So I know that this is checked. Look at that. So now we have this is unchecked. And when I click on it, this will be checked, and I see, oh yeah, that is checked. And I don't have an SVG, but you could add a photo of a check in here, which I sadly do not have right now. Or actually, let's go to Relume icons, and let's do this right now, so we can even have it properly. So let's go to check. Here we go. Okay, so how do I do this? Because my recording bar is right over their button to check this. Let's see. to download this. Okay, we cannot use Relume. Oh, I have to zoom in. Okay. Okay, now I got to download the SVG. Perfect. So let's add a photo on the checked state. Let's add this in here. And here we go. And now we have this checked, and now also we can just, change that background color a little bit and make this a little bit more decent because, now we have a different indicator that it was checked. That looks good. So now I have this not checked and this is checked. So this is our little fake checkbox. Beautiful. Look at that. Checked and not checked. Great. Perfect. So now what we want to do is we want to go to add a little transition. So on the default state when it is not checked, we're just going to add a transition of all properties, and let's make this like 400 milliseconds is always a nice one. So it will not affect because it's a background image. So never mind, no transition. So here we go. This is checked and unchecked. Beautiful. We start like that. So now we have our list item, our heading, and our fake checkbox. So now is the question, how do we get this thing to work? So first of all, now we need to configure those things in Wized. So we're going to go to publish this now to our domains, and we're going to connect our Webflow project to our Wized project right now. So let's copy this URL of our Webflow site and go to Wized. Now, inside the Wized dashboard, we want to click on New Project, and we're going to paste our URL right in here. We're going to copy this code that Wized gives us. They call it the embed, and we're going to move. Now, go to the site settings of your Webflow project. Now, we're going to go to the custom code section. You need to have a plan or have an agency plan to add this. So please feel free to upgrade your account. If you don't want to upgrade your account, it is completely fine adding this in the body or the header of your site code too. That is how you can access and test around with Wized for free without having to pay for Webflow. Now, you want to click on Create Project. And now, Wized will be connected to your Webflow site, and you will see your Webflow site inside of Wized. Now, if I go to X-ray mode, nothing is happening, right? Because no elements are recognized by Wized. Now, Wized will not work. I can't do anything, right? I cannot add an action here because, no element is recognized. So what we need to do is Wized works by something called attributes. If you know FinSuite attributes, and Wized is made by FinSuite, they have their love to attributes, so they're going to use attributes to make Wized work in your Webflow project. So let's go back to the Webflow project and let's add some fun attributes here. And Webflow is loading a little bit today. Okay. Okay, perfect. Now it's loading. So now let's think about the functionality of what we're trying to build here. We're trying to render a list, and while I'm already looking on that, I may want to do that flex down and give it 0.5 rem space. Perfect. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to render a list here. And also, we may want to make this scrollable. Beautiful. So we're basically essentially trying to render a list of tasks in here. So in order to do that, we need to add attributes to the active elements. Think of it like this. The elements that we want Wized to do things with need to have Wized attributes. So, of course, we need to have this item because we want to render a list of it. So we need to add, a Wized attribute on this item. The way we're going to do that is we're going to go to Settings, and we see this section called Custom Attributes. We're going to click on the plus and add an attribute. The name will be Wized, that is W-I-Z-E-D, and the value can be anything. This will be the name that this element will have. Let's call this list item. Now, you can name them however you want, just no spaces. you can do list minus item, or you can do list and then capital ITEM. So camel case, call it however you want. List item. And then we're just going to go to the heading, because it doesn't give us any value if all the list items just say to-do item. We also need Wized to update the text of, the task that we want to do. So we're going to go to settings, custom attribute plus Wized, and let's call this item text, just like that. And then the checkbox. We want Wized to add the combo class of checked if something happens with this element. So what we need to do is we need to go to custom attributes, add the Wized attribute of checkbox, just like that. And Wized will now recognize those elements when I'm going to publish this on my site, and we can do funky stuff with it. So let's just wait till this loads. And then we are ready to move over to Wized and, go over that a little bit. And then we can start building the data structure for this to add the logic to it. And it looks like Webflow is taking a little bit to load. Let's see what's going on here. Did it send that already? Okay. Webflow is taking a little bit today. This is out of my hands. It is internet. Am I connected? Yeah. Interesting. So, at the risk of losing all attributes, let me refresh. And fingers crossed. Beautiful. Attributes are still there. So now let's just publish this and let's hope this works. Yes, it worked. Perfect. So now let's go to Wized, and right now we see, oh no, nothing happened. So we need to go to this reload icon and click on here. Now if I go to X-ray mode, we see that now all of a sudden something happened. Wized is recognizing those elements. And now we will be able to do cool stuff with them. And this is where I'm going to do the cut, because now we want to start building the database. In order to do that, we will be needing Xano. So I'm going to go to my Xano account, and I'm going to click on Add Table. And I call this To-Do List Project. Oh, To-Do List Project. And then I will do UUID. This is just for security purposes. This is how you want to call those rows. I like to use UUIDs because, every row has a unique ID. And then it says add basic CRUD operations. This is basically not what we want for this one. We're going to create an API group from scratch here. So to-do list project UUID. Add table. And now we can create a table for our to-do list. So let's call this task. There will be our task. And then we're going to click on the plus, and we're going to go to Boolean. This is like a checkbox. This is the technical term, and we call this a check box. So I can now add a record and say, buy milk, check. And go to the office. Yep, made it. Check. And then we can say cancel Hulu. Not done yet. Learn client first. Learn client first. Have to admit, not checked. And then we can do get member stack all the time. And get Wized, of course. And here we go. So you get the idea. This is now our database, which is just a spreadsheet. This is super simple. So let's open a new tab with Xano. That makes it way easier to work with it. And now we need to create the logic, the API. The API will be the way how we interact with this database. So let's just give it the same name as our database. And yeah, you want to have Swagger turned off or private, requires token. Just don't make it public for security reasons. Otherwise, everybody will be able to call your API super easily. And now we go to this button saying Add API Endpoint. And we want to go to Start from Scratch. So what this does is we're going to create a webhook URL, basically, that we can call and get data from. So let's call this Get Tasks. Get Tasks. And since we're going to take data from our database, this is a get operation. If we were to send data, this would be post. The other ones, they're not important. Get and post. So we're getting data right now. So this is a get operation. So now let's actually, we don't need an input because it will just always provide the same static data, but you may require inputs and then use them throughout your application, but this is not needed in this example. So we're going to go to the function stack on the plus, and we are going to go to query all records. So we're going to get all records. And now I'm going to search for my table. Here we go. And I don't need to define any custom query. I'm just going to go to save. And now when I run this, you see that I have all my to-do tasks. This is it. We just built logic to query our database. So now if you go one step back, we want to go to copy base URL. This is where we will connect with this specific API group that we created for this database in here. So now we're going to go to Wized. And on the top here, we're going to create an app. What we're doing right now is we're connecting this group with Wized so Wized can call all our endpoints. Let's call this Xano to-do list. Oh, Xano to-do list. Beautiful. And now we're going to go to REST because Xano is a REST API. You look at the webhook symbol, everything that is not in this list will be the webhook symbol. And we're going to write return. So every time in Wized we see this function editor pop up, we need to write return because we are using JavaScript expressions here. So when I want to return hi, I need to write return, open quotes, end quotes, hi. Then this will turn it into hi. This is all the JavaScript you need to know if you want to use Wized. Now we're going to paste our URL in here, and this is perfect. We can save this. This is our group URL. We're going to close this, and you may ask yourself, why group URL? If I were to go to my endpoint and copy the endpoint URL, that's up here, you see that the endpoint URL contains, the path, get tasks. But we will be using this get tasks part in our requests in Wized, because otherwise we would have to add a separate app for every endpoint group, which, gets the project cluttered. So, we're going to add return, open, close quotes, then the endpoint URL, and this will turn it into the endpoint URL, and that can be used. Beautiful. Now let's go to the request, and let's select the name, get tasks. Beautiful. And now let's go to Xano, and let's copy this path. This is the endpoint path related to our endpoint group, and we are going to go to app, Xano, return, open close quotes, paste. This is our path. Here we go. Now we're going to look into the method. This is a get method because we're getting data. So we need to use get in Wized because Wized needs to do the get too because that is the type of the call. Now, when we run this, we are going to get data. Now, if you were to have inputs in here, let's say we want to have any input. Let's say we want to send the input of name, potentially. And we're going to publish this. Now, I can still run this, but for example, if this would be required, and this is just as a side note, this is not needed for this thing, what we're doing here today, but if this would be required and I'm going to reload everything, it will say, doesn't work because name is not in here. So then I would have to go to the URL parameters and type in name. And now I need to write return, and I can do hey. Hey will be my name. And then when I run this, it will work. I will get the data. And if I go to the request history, I will see that when I refresh, takes a little bit sometimes, that I passed on the name of hey. But we don't need hey as a name, but I just still want you to know this because I think this is maybe beneficial. But now if I pass on that name without having the name required, it will just do nothing. It will just send empty data. But just so that you know. So we're going to get the data. Now you may ask yourself, okay, we have this list data. Now let's already start rendering the list, right? Because, otherwise that list is pointless. So let's go to X-ray mode and let's click on the list item. Now we have this attribute list item, and we want to render a list of the data that we're getting from the database. We're going to go to settings and we're going to go to render list. That's how we're rendering a list. And again, we have to write return. This is render list from array. Array is a code word for list. So as you can see here, if I were to render the list from this, which is already data, this is the array, we're going to get all the data from which we want to render the list. Now, you need to look for this square brackets. If we have an open square bracket and a closed square bracket, this is an array, meaning a list. And from this you can render a list. Because in this square bracket open, square bracket closed, there are multiple with those curly braces. Those are objects. You see, we have this object, comma, object, comma, object, comma, object, comma, and so on and so forth, contained in square bracket, square bracket. And this is a list. This is probably most of the times when you see this 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 1, 1, 1, 1. This is the one above the first 0. This will be what you need to do. So we're going to look. This is my tip here. First 0, the one over the first 0, this is the one that you need. And now if I'm going to reload this page and, process this request, we should be rendering the list. But before that, before we can render the list, we need to assign a variable for index, which is an iterator variable. I don't have one yet, so the list is not going to be rendered. I need to click on this plus, and let's call this iterator. And I write, of course, always return. We don't need to do quotes when we do 0, because then we're going to pass on the 0 as text, but we want 0 as number. There is a difference between numbers and text in JavaScript, Wized. So if I were to do something like this, this will return 0 as text, but we need 0 as a number so we can work with it on a mathematical, programmatical level. So I'm going to close this, and the moment I assign the iterator, and then, we see, oh, that item disappeared. What happened? Because now we're actually rendering it dynamically. We get some content flashing, but, we're rendering it dynamically. So the moment right now this request runs, we're going to get our list, which is pretty neat so far. But now, on page load, how do we load this? So this is where the difference between element and event actions comes in. Let's go give it a plus, and let's call this load tasks. This will be a request that will load tasks. This will not be element. This will be event. Events are things that are happening on the page itself. So we're going to add a trigger for page starts loading. We're going to add a plus, and we're going to go to the action, perform request, get tasks. And now, as you can see, every time I go on the page, those are getting rendered just like that. Beautiful. But now they just all say to-do list item, to-do list item, or to-do item, to-do item, to-do item. So what we do is we're going to go to the first to-do item, this one, and we're going to go to settings in the element action. Attribute is already applied. And we're going to go to set text. That way, we're just going to use plain text here. And we can set the value. I can write return, and I can do like, hey, for example. But now, if I reload, they are all going to say, hey. I want them to, every item in my list has a different name, right? And, I'm getting all those different names in here. So how can I get the dynamic name for the current item? So the first step of doing that is to go to my request. This request will, get the data. This is the thing that we're going to run. So I can look into the data that I'm getting from my request visually and look for the name. And we see we have ID, created at, task. This is the name. I want to show this here. So I'm going to click here, and I'm going to click on buy milk. Now, as you can see, if I'm going to close this, they all are going to say buy milk, which is better because now we have dynamic data that is coming from the database here, from our API endpoint, serving the information from our database, but it is all the same because now here comes our iterator in the game. We have a number. We see if I have 0, it will say buy milk, but number 1 will say go to the office, and number 2 will say cancel Hulu. So if I'm going to set this to 3, it will say learn client first. If I'm going to set this to 4, that will not exist because we don't have 4. But if I set this to 2, it will say cancel Hulu, and 1 will say go to the office, and so on. So what if there would be a magical way of iterating over those dynamic input fields to make them work with a dynamic rendered list from our list? Like if there would only be a thing such as that. Oh, wait, there is. Remember, we assigned this iterator variable, and we linked into this list under the variable for index section. This will now get handy. Because if I'm going to set the text in here, in those brackets where there used to be a number, I'm going to add my iterator variable. Important, it needs to be the one that is linked to the list. If it is the one linked to the list, as you can see right here, it will then show the dynamic items, the dynamic names for the list items. So now my question is, why is this one not working? And that may be something interesting to look into. Let's reload, and we see buy milk, go to office, cancel Hulu, learn client first, get Wized. Now, for some reason, there is an error that I cannot explain to myself. So let's go to the data store, and let's actually do some little bit of a debugging. So as we can see, I have 4. 4 doesn't have a task in here, which is interesting. Let's go to our endpoint. Let's make sure everything is okay. Oh, for some reason that got cleared up. I have no idea why. But let's go to get member stack. Here we go. And that should fix it. Get member stack. Here we go. So that is working now. So, something happened on there. So we're going to render this list right here. That is rendered. That is working. So now we need to do cool stuff with it. And the cool stuff that we can do here is using more actions in Wized. But even before we do the cool stuff, we want to check the ones that are currently being checked, right? Because we have check, check, check. We have 3 checked. So let's go to X-ray mode and let's go to the checkbox. And we have the attribute applied on it, and we can set an action. So there is this action called set class, which is cool. So I'm just going to go to my Webflow project, and I need to get the name of my combo class that I want to add. So that is checked. So let's type in checked, and let's verify with the iterator again. So I'm going to write return, and I'm going to go to my data from the, from the request that I'm getting back, and I go to the checkbox value. I'm going to add that in here. And again, same game as with the text, we're going to add the iterator. Now, if I'm going to reload, we see that the ones checked on the database are the ones now being showed as checked. But how can we uncheck them? Like, I want to click this and I want to uncheck it. Now, here comes the cool thing, because now we made a GET request, meaning we are getting data from the database and displaying this on Wized, which works fine. But now we want to do something where, we want to, listen to an event happening inside of Wized and then send it to the database, take this information that we gathered in Wized that happened on the front end, inform the backend about it, ask the backend to do this change, and then send us the updated data back. And we're going to do this right now. So this was get. Now we're going to go with post. We're posting data back to our backend, which is pretty cool. So let's go to the backend, to the endpoint, and let's add another endpoint. And let's go to start from scratch. This will be a post because we're updating data. And then we're going to go to, we're going to say this, we're going to call this check. Just like that. Save. And now we have a post endpoint. Now we need an identifier, because the goal here is to say, record 984C, 83DC, and so on. I want this to be true. This is what we want to do. So now we have this ID field and we have this cool number. So let's build an endpoint where we can send the number, because every task has this UUID and is indexable, and where we say, this one, I want this one to be checked, or I want this one not to be checked. Let's build this logic. So let's go to let's go to inputs. Let's go on plus. Let's add text. It may seem intimidating or intriguing to add the UUID thing because you're adding a UUID, but a UUID is actually a specific data type which you don't want to use. You want to use text. So let's call this UUID. Let's click on save. And now when I run this, I will be able, as you can see, in the quotes, as always, in the quotes, add this number. Now we're getting nothing back because nothing is defined. So now is a good time to do an update. Oh, they call it edit record. So now I want to go to my to-do list project, and you see I have this field name ID. I have my field value. I need to go to the input. This is the input, right? The input I made up here, and I can select the UUID which I selected. And now I want to update the checkbox value. Pretty cool. So, you see, I'm updating this record, right? At least I'm not passing on any data. So now I want to add a Boolean. So let's call this check. So this is like the checkbox. This is the Boolean is the data format of a checkbox. I have true or false. So let's set this to true, right? So what we can do now is when I go to the checkbox value, I can edit the value in here. The value, and this is updating the current record. So this is updating this one, which is not checked right now, right? This is now unchecked. So if I'm going to go back here, and this will be true, so we will be checking this. So I want to update in this edit record the checkbox field with the new Boolean sent over. So I'm going to save this. If I run this, you will see this will be now updated to true. And if I reload this, we see, oh, yeah, that is true. It went all the way down because Xano has their new filtering thing, which drives me insane. But that worked. Up by milk is now true. So that works. So this is what we want to do. We're going to pass on a true or false value, and we're going to pass on the ID of the task, and therefore we're going to update this. Now we're only returning one task, which is completely fine. So let's do this like this. So let's go to publish, and let's go to, let's copy the check, the path, and let's add another request in here. So let's go to Webflow, to Wized, sorry. Let's go to requests. Let's add this check request. Let's go to Xano. Let's write return, quotes, check. This is a post. And now we have URL parameters and body. If you're going to do a post, please put the things that you would normally put in the URL parameters in the body, ideally. So we need to pass on two values, UUID and check. So I'm going to add UUID, right, which will be return. And I'm just going to leave this blank for now because I want to show you some super cool magic that Wized is doing for you. And then I'm going to add check. This will be return, right? So now we have those values, and I could technically hard code them in. But right now we have this request, and we can call this endpoint that we built here now from Wized. So let's just add some static data in here for now so that we can test with it. Let's add quotes. Here we go. And let's add, you don't need quotes for data type. So if this is true, you will not need to add quotes. You should not. And now you see I will update this record and get this updated data back. So what we need to do now is when I, for example, click on any of those of those checkboxes, I need to register where I clicked on. And the cool thing is Wized is basically doing this for me. I don't need to set, any data or recognize where this was clicked on. I can just simply, go to my element here, and I can add another action on event, click, prevent default, and I can run an action to perform the request of check. I don't need to do more. I don't need to pass on any data. So now it will not work. It will come back as, no data provided. But if I click this and reload, if I click this, you see that we are going to update this. We're going to perform this request on click, right? So it will just, we'll just always send the same thing and nothing will change. But when I click any of those, it will update the request. So now the cool thing is Wized is able to recognize where I clicked on. Now this is a very complex thing in web development, and Wized is doing that for us. So think of it like this. When I go to the check and I have my UUID, which, every of those tasks being rendered here is dynamic. Like this one starts with 7, this one starts with 5. Let's go to this UUID and let's again add our iterator that will make it dynamic. So the cool thing is, and this is cool, if I click on cancel Hulu, right? Cancel Hulu is checked. If I click on go to the office and reload, go to the office will be checked. Because Wized is registering where I clicked on, sending that to the backend, and then telling the backend, yes, make this item true, which is super cool. But we don't always want this item to be true, because if I click this again, it's true, but how do I go to false? So what we can do is, but the cool thing is actually, Wized, when I perform the request, let's say I perform the request triggered from this action. Let's say I click on the third item. Let's take a random number. I click on the third item. And when I click on the third item and this request in Wized, making sure it uses the vIterator that is linked to the list I click on. But when I click on this item inside a list, you don't even need to apply the iterator on this item. But if any item in this list item that has the vIterator assigned on top of it is clicked, and I link it back to the ID that was this list, where this list was rendered from, and I add my iterator on here and I click on it, it will take the ID of the third item when I click on the third item. Or when I click on the fifth item, it will take the ID of the fifth item, and so on. And I only need to add this vIterator. You don't even need to know how this works. You just need to know they are all synced together. And this is why Wized is no code, right? You don't have to worry about those things. So I'm just going to add the vIterator in here, and then it will make sure that it will click the right item right in here. Beautiful. So now I want to do the same thing with here too. I'm going to take my checkbox value, I'm going to update that number with the vIterator so we always get the item that I click on. And I want to reverse this. So the way I do that is, right now this is true, right? But when I add an exclamation mark, it will be false. So I will reverse the current state. And then I will send that on the database and have this equal the new state. So when I click on buy milk and reload, buy milk is not done, which is cool. And when I click on cancel, when I click on everything, basically, everything now will be undone. So now we always need to refresh. No, we don't. So let's implement that logic to have this refresh for us. So we want to add an action that will be refresh list, and this will be refresh the list. This will need to be an event, and we can listen for an event called request finishes. So every time the check request finishes, we want to perform the request to get all tasks, because we update the task and then we can call our initial request to load these tasks again to give us the updated information. So now when I click on buy milk will be checked. When I click on get Wized will be checked. When I click on get member stack will be checked. If I reload this, beautiful. Get client first will be checked. Go to office will be checked. And then when I, actually I'm leaving right now, so I can check this again, it will be unchecked. And then, it will rearrange that list. That is Xano being crazy. So what we want to do is we maybe want to arrange this list which is actually what we want to do. We want to have the unchecked items on the top. So this is, it's organizing that, because based on timestamp, based on when it was done, we're going to update this. So this is how we're going to build like a super simple to-do list, right? So this is actually happening by timing. So let's update this. I want in every instance the checked items to be on top. So what I want to do is I want to add, let's see if I can do this in here. I can't sort the output, but when I go to my response here, I can add a filter. So let's go one step back. I have my response in here as a variable, so I can add a filter to this this data that I'm returning from here. I can add a filter, I can add sort, and then I can do path check, right? We called that, checkbox. So this will be path check box, and checkbox, we keep this as it is, and ascending or descending, we probably need false, I assume. Let's see. Oh, shit. Absolutely wrong thing. I was at the wrong endpoint. That was my mistake. Don't do this. Go and publish. Go to the different endpoint that is rendering the list. This has relevancy to it. And now go on response. Add filter. Sort. We're going to sort. Sort this. Click on sort. Then we go to we look for checkbox, for the checkbox item, and we are going to try false. If not, it's true. for the sorting mechanism. Let's run this, and we should have all, now we only have true on top. We just want to reverse that. So let's go to return, and the sort filter, we're going to change the ascending or descending to true, which probably means ascending. They should just have us put the word in there. Yeah, so now all faults are on top. Beautiful. Let's publish this. And here we go. So now we're rendering this list. When I click on cancel Hulu, it will be automatically organized, so only the undone tasks are on top. As you can see, if I were to do it like this, but if I now have uncheck client first will be over the one that was done because, it will be sorted. And then when I do this, it will automatically arrange, so only the checked items are being rendered. And there is a small delay when I click on this item until it is checked, because it is going to the database, coming back, and then doing another call, asking the database and coming back again. So there is a little lag. What you can do, you can fix this. Again, this is super simple. I can add another on event, click, because right now this list is being rendered from current data. But it takes a little bit to go to the backend and come back until we update the data. But what we can do is something we call progressive updating. And we can update the current data only on the front end before the data was updated on the back end to make it look like it updated instantly until the content refreshes, until it then shows the actual state that is represented on the back end. So this was a lot of words. This is a little bit of JavaScript, but let's do this. So I will have to go to a run function and, let's update this. So very simple. Let's write return. And, let's go on, the current task item in my list, right? So this is the checkbox, vIterator. We need to take the vIterator, so it's the dynamic one. And then we're going to do exactly what we did in our request. So let's go to the request for check. And what we did here is we are reversing the current state, and we're going to close this, right? So now when I go to the checkbox function here, then the checkbox value, because the cool thing is the data in here can be modified. So if I have this equal 0, right? Like this will not work because it's a Boolean, right? But if I do this false, I will be able to update that state probably. It doesn't look too promising, but let's see. So I tried to reverse that. That may only work in my mind, though. Let's see. Let's see if this happens, if this works. It works, but we're going to get content flashing. It works instantly. Maybe not the best way of approaching this. It's triggering it now 2 times. Oh shit, now I know what I do. Now I know what I'm doing wrong here. You see, this is troubleshooting 101, because now I update the current state before it goes to the back end. I am updating the state twice. So think of it like this. I click on it, and this only works good. Like you see, this will not work at all. So what is happening, I click on it immediately, because Wized is super fast. I click on it, immediately Wized is making this true. And then in our, let's say it was false. Now I click on it, Wized is making it true. And then on my request, I take the current state, which is true, and I'm making it false. So therefore, it's not updating it. Okay. So now I'm going on the check, and I'm not reversing it, because then we would be double reversing it. And now this works instantly. Look how fast and cool this works. And here you go. I can, check get member stack, and then get member stack will be down here. Uncheck by milk. Look how great this works. And it is automatically rearranging. I can go check, go to the office, and it's all the way down. I can go get member stack, it's all the way down. Buy milk, it's all the way down. Cancel Hulu, all the way down. Learn client first, all the way down. Get Wized, all the way down. Now everything is done. I uncheck those instantly, and we are updating the current state which it is rendered from, which I just showed you using the little run function. Meaning what we're doing here is on click of this element, we're getting this item's value, and then we're getting this item's value again, reversing it, and having with the equal sign, having this equal the new state, the new value of it, right? So think of it like this. If this is true, right? If this item is true, I will take this item again, reverse it, so make true false, and then with this equation here, have false equal true or true equal false, right? This is reversing its current state because with the equal sign, I'm setting its new content. So therefore, when I make this get member stack, it will update this. And since we're already updating this here in this request, I just need to send its new value to. Wiz is probably making sure to already update that before you fire off the request. And then when I click on it, immediately it's updating that. It doesn't need to go to the backend and come back to represent the front end change. We're progressively changing that. Now, a downside is if your server is down, it will just make a check, but it will not check it. But this is another issue to worry about. You don't need that. Like sometimes even Facebook has that issue. But this is the way. This is the industry norm of doing those things, and it's working great. Look at that. And this is fully built in Webflow, and now you can finally build web applications that are fully interactive in Webflow. And it's not like we're just doing funky stuff on Webflow. I'm looking at the database, get member stack, buy milk, go to office, get Wized. I refresh my database, all of that is updated, right? So now I uncheck everything, and now in my database, in real time, everything is unchecked. And now I check everything in here, as you can see, and now in my database, everything is checked. Look at that. Isn't that amazing? This is your first web application built in Wized and Webflow. And now for the next video, this is the basics. Now after this, you can build everything. And in the next beginner mini course, this is really a cold crash course. In the next crash course, we are going to add member stack in there, and we're going to build our first AI SaaS business in less than an hour. So let's get right started. And see you in the next video. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for spending 1 hour together with me right here, learning Wized and Webflow and web application development. You just learned a tremendously valuable skill here, because now you can turn your ideas into reality. Thank you so much for watching. Please let me know in the comments if you have any questions. I'm here day and night to help you. And please let me know if you have any ideas for other videos, or if there's anything specifically that you're struggling with where you would like to see a video about. I'm always here and happy to help. Thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate that. And see you tomorrow.